If you are a woman, then you have been impacted by the life of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Elizabeth was one woman who drastically shifted the course of history for all women. Today, I'm going to teach you about her early life, many accomplishments, and the long-living legacy that she left behind. To begin, Elizabeth became the woman that she was because of the many influences and conditions of her early life. She was born on November 12, 1815 in Johnstown, New York, into a very wealthy family. Her father, Daniel Cady, was a self-made landowner and very involved in politics. He served a term in Congress and then spent the rest of his life as a court judge. He is the one who initially sparked her interest in politics. Elizabeth's character came straight from her mother, Margaret Cady. Margaret was very independent, dominant, and rebellious to the opinions of her husband. Her husband disagreed with abolition and women's rights, and she openly disagreed with him. Elizabeth spent most of her life striving to impress her father. He knew she was very intelligent, but he struggled between encouraging it and condoning behavior that was very uncustomary for young females. Margaret was very withdrawn from her children, so Elizabeth never really paid tribute to her mother. Elizabeth received more education than most girls. She attended Johnstown Academy until she was 15 years old. Then her father allowed her to go to finishing school, but he forbid her to go to college. She finally convinced him to allow her to attend Troy Female Seminary. She graduated from Troy Female Seminary in 1832 and met Henry Stanton, her soon-to-be future husband. Henry proposed to her, and she viewed marriage as independence because it freed her from the grip that her father had on her. They married in 1840 and headed straight to the London World Anti-Slavery Convention for their honeymoon. The couple settled down in Seneca Falls, New York, and had a total of 7 children. They drifted apart and ended up splitting up just before his death in 1887. Next, we will discuss the many accomplishments of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The most popular event that she was involved in was the Seneca Falls Convention. Elizabeth met Lucretia Mott at the London World Anti-Slavery Convention. These two women meeting was what dramatically shifted the course of history. Lucretia had a very positive impact throughout all of Elizabeth's life. These two women organized the Seneca Falls Convention. The convention was held on July 19, 1848, in the Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls, New York. Over 300 men and women attended this meeting to discuss their rights and wrongs, both civil and political. The Declaration of Sentiments came out of this meeting. Elizabeth had written this document based on the Declaration of Independence to parallel the struggles of the Founding Fathers with those of the women's suffrage movement. The Declaration not only called for women's suffrage, but also for broad social change. This document was signed by 68 women and 32 men. The Seneca Falls Convention was a great success and boost to Elizabeth's career. Elizabeth also founded and co-founded a number of organizations. In 1869, she and Susan B. Anthony formed the National Women's Suffrage Association. Elizabeth was the first president of this organization and held that position until 1890. At that time, this organization joined with another suffrage group to form the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Elizabeth was also the president of that group for 2 years. Along with this organization, Elizabeth also created the American Equal Rights Association, Working Women's Association, and Women's Suffrage Association of America. Elizabeth also had a number of publications, but these were some of the most significant. Her and Susan B. Anthony wrote a 3-volume history of the women's suffrage movement. Volumes 1 and 2 of the History of Women's Suffrage were published in 1881 and 1882. She worked on the 3rd volume, and it was published in 1886. Then, after that, Elizabeth began writing the Women's Bible to interpret scripture from a feminist viewpoint. Published in 1895, this firmly placed her as one of the most radical of the women's suffrage advocates. This book caused much controversy and led to the loss of many of her supporters. Lastly, we will observe the lifelong legacy that Elizabeth left behind. She passed away on October 26, 1902 from heart failure. 20 years after that, in 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed. This amendment guaranteed American women the right to vote. Although she never lived to see the passing of women's suffrage, many feminists took on her lifelong battle after her death. As you can see, Elizabeth Cady Stanton stepped out of social norms of what women could and could not do, and started a movement that drastically shifted history. If Elizabeth would have listened to the voices of her father and many other men and women who opposed her views, women may have never had the right to vote. She was tired of women having to submit to laws that they had no representation in, and having to submit to men entirely. She saw women as very powerful human beings and dedicated her life to helping others view them as the same. Thank you.